Okay, hello and welcome to my KIN 422 presentation. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, my name is Alyssa Zender and I'm a licensed massage therapist. Today I will be talking to you about AquaStretch. A brief overview of what we'll be covering today. First off, what is AquaStretch? I'm guessing you haven't heard of it because it's not that popular yet. Kudos to you if you have. And then we'll be going into fascia and the concept of tensegrity, touching on the fascial adhesion cycle, and finally going into some AquaStretch theory, so the principles that govern why it works. What is AquaStretch? AquaStretch is an assisted stretching and myofascial release modality performed in the water. It was developed by George Eversole. He's a doctor of osteopathy and advanced practitioner of homeopathy, working out of Las Vegas. And I'll tell you now, if you have an opportunity to get some training with him, I would highly recommend it, or any of his students that are certified in teaching. I'm currently learning from Jessica Huss. She's a physical therapist in Chandler, Arizona. So feel free to get in touch with me if you're interested in receiving some training. This is an amazing modality that, in my opinion, really needs to spread because of its efficacy. So, AquaStretch is a protocol. It's a series of holds that treats the entire body. And what you see over on the right here, that's actually George. And his client is wearing weights around her ankles. And he is using this hold, applying pressure into the suboccipital muscles and a traction force. So there's actually traction throughout her entire skeletal structure right now because of the weight on her ankles, the anchoring to the ground there. This is something that's not really possible on land unless you're using some kind of traction device or an inversion table. It's similar, but AquaStretch offers a lot more ability to move in all three planes to a great degree of specificity and catering to individual need. So that's that bullet point here. The third bullet point, releasing fascial adhesions through facilitator pressure and client's movement. So what isn't captured in a still picture is the fact that in this position, the client would normally and instinctively begin moving their head and neck, perhaps in circles or rotating. Whatever is set off by that stretch reflex to help facilitate the release of a fascial adhesion. Tensegrity is maybe a term that you've heard before, especially in the KIN department. It was coined by R. Buckminster Fuller, and it's a combination of the words tension and integrity. So here in the image, this is a very simple model of how the human body operates. So off to the right, you see a compression on the right side of the structure causing a widening or a compensation on the left side. And so the principle here, the important point is that dysfunction in one area of the structure causes a change systemically. And this is why you can have pain in one region, but the problem is somewhere else. So let's use a really simple example. In the human body, we hear about tight hip flexors all the time because people sit so much. So tension, the anterior tilt that happens, that could potentially be inhibiting the antagonist muscle action, so hip extension. So constricted hip flexors could inhibit hip extensors. And these compensation patterns can happen in literally an infinite number of ways and combinations depending on the person's movement history and injuries. It's completely individual, and that's the beauty of AquaStretch. It provides an environment for clients to explore their own movement with huge ranges of motion compared to what you can do on land. The fascial adhesion cycle. So, fascia is a collagen connective tissue found throughout the entire human body. If you've eaten meat and pulled the fibers apart, or you pull the skin back on chicken, you see that very fine kind of spider web like material. That's the fascia. And it is literally everywhere. It's connecting the skin to the muscles to one another, with each muscle group and wrapped in its own fascial sheath, connects the muscles to the bone, and it anchors the blood vessels in our body. It's literally everywhere. So, the concept of an adhesion, let's stick to physical trauma for now. Adhesions can form for a variety of reasons, but physical trauma, injury, is at the top of the list. So let's say that you hit your shin on the coffee table. Then we're in that inflammation stage. The injury has happened, you're causing inflammation, and the fascia has this mechanism, this instinctive protective mechanism to lay down extra collagen fibers to brace that area. So it's a good thing right after injury because it stabilizes and protects that area from excess movement that could cause further injury. But the problem is that if these adhesions aren't released after the area has time to heal, it can result in limited range of motion and compensated movement patterns. So, AquaStretch theory is probably easiest to grasp if you have a bit of a visual representation. So, I'm going to play this video. This is actually me working on my grandmother. So, number one, enhanced flexibility in water. My grandmother is 76 years old. And so that huge range of motion at the hip that you just saw would not be possible on land. So that's the concept of enhanced flexibility in the water. The use of variable stretch resistance. You see down here, her standing leg has an ankle weight, and that's stabilizing the standing leg so that we can get an extra stretch resistance in the floating leg. So the more stable her grounded leg is, the more we can stretch the other leg. Otherwise, she would just be bobbing around. And sometimes with very flexible people, you'd have to put multiple weights, which she actually needed because you saw that movement kind of coming up on her toes. She was actually too flexible for one weight, so I added another one later on. And the fascial adhesion theory, we covered that. Intuitive movement is what's happening right now. So when I came around in that arc, my grandma told me above the water, which you can't see, that she felt a restriction, a tightness in the front of her hip. And so I provided a stretch, and then we got more specific. So I went to the location where I suspected a fascial adhesion, applied pressure, and then she went into her intuitive movement to help facilitate that release. That's a really interesting phenomenon with AquaStretch, especially the more practiced a client is with movement, like an athlete or a performer, or just a very conscious person, body, mind, strong connection. They intuitively know how to move to help facilitate the release of the adhesion. So, with people that are not as in touch with their body, you might have to give extra instruction. And the graphics that I used in this presentation can be found in the certificate manual. And here's the link for that. It's online. Please do not try this unless you have been trained. But that being said, if you're interested in receiving some training, I would highly recommend George Eversole in Las Vegas or Jessica Huss in Chandler, Arizona. I'm currently studying with her. They're both fantastic. And like I said, I think this modality really needs to spread because it is highly effective and in many ways easier on the practitioner and the client. So thank you for watching my presentation and take care.